Hi guys! Today I am so excited to be showing you a game between Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. Of course, this game might not have been actually played by them, but it was featured in this Louis Vuitton ad, and it is actually a game between Hikaru and Magnus Carlsen from 2017. Let's dive into this game. I'm not sure who the other guy is. Who's the other guy? Okay, I don't want to talk about that, so let's just get to the game. So we are going to take a look at this game played between Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. It's true, some people here do understand fashion, and this game was played in 2017 in Norway chess. So e4, c5, knight f3, d6. Yes, the soccer player, Magnus Carlsen. Knight f6, knight c3, a6. This is the Najdorf. And I actually play a line sort of similar to the h3 move, except I play like a move, 2 moves later after bishop e3, e5. Here, I'll just show it to you guys on the board. I play it in this position. So the h3 line is also pretty interesting. Yeah, this is an actual Magnus versus Hikaru game, and it is the game that is featured on the briefcase that you can see. Hey Ocean Flowers, thank you so much for the prime. Also, I wanted to mention that the notes in here are not by me. Not trying to steal them. They're not by me. But now this has turned into a slightly scuffed, I don't want to say scuffed, but I want to say this has turned into maybe like a Dragadorf. There's an actual opening line called the Dragadorf where it's a mix of the dragon and the Najdorf. And if you don't know what this is, like, well, look, if you look at the picture that's right above my head, one of those guys is Cristiano Ronaldo, the football player, and the other one is Messi, who is also a football player. This is the game that's featured on the trunk, except for the fact that it's not, obviously they didn't play the game. They took a game played between Magnus and Hikaru, which is super cool.
Happy Saturday.
They didn't actually play this game against each other. So, yes. Alright, let's see this. Ba, 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 ba. Aw, thank you so much, Castlevania, for $30. Happy Saturday. I appreciate it. Thank you. Alright, so g6 makes this slightly into a Dragadorf, which I don't love. White plays g3, knight c6, bishop e3. And then bishop to g2, castles. So this is all super, like, very standard Sicilian, I want to call it. One of the big things about the Sicilian, obviously, is that black usually has a better pawn structure if you go into an endgame. So most of the time, white is a little less inclined to go into the endgame, but it very much depends. And you might be like, yeah, this is a pretty positional Sicilian. Nobody's going to do anything really crazy. Once black plays e5, he's creating a slight weakness on d6, which is a potential weakness. And it also gives white an outpost, obviously. But it's not that easy for white to attack, because currently his knight is on d5, and also additionally the c4 pawn is already kind of highly advanced, so he's going to push b5 and potentially take on c4. Alright, so I would have personally preferred queen to d2, just so you can play rook to d1. Wow, white doesn't this arrow draw? You don't really ever want to play bishop takes d5 because the queen's going to take, but retreating the queen to d2 instead of e3 is going to mean that you can put pressure on the d file a little faster. He didn't do that. Instead, Magnus plays queen to e3. After b5, rook to c1. You just don't, you don't want to create an isolated pawn on c4, so you want to be able to take back with the rook potentially. Also, you don't really want to take on b5, because if you take on b5, your a file is going to be a little bit weak, and then this pawn is always going to be under attack, so that's also just something you do not want to deal with. So after rook takes c4, bishop takes d5, kind of like the comment suggested, and I mentioned it's pretty difficult to attack the d6 pawn because now your d-file's closed, so black wasn't that worried when he pushed e5, creating the backwards pawn. Alright, so after a5, rook fc1, knight to c5, pawn to a3. Pawn to f5 is a little bit suspicious. I would say this is the kind of move that it looks like it's expanding your position, and you could potentially, you know, try to create a kingside attack or something of that sort, which is very much in Hikaru's style, right? Like, Hikaru loves playing slightly more aggressive. He likes creating chances for himself, and it's really cool to see that. But in this position, it can weaken the king a lot because the king is, you know, doesn't really have a dark squared bishop in front of it. I know we're going into the end games, but it's still not the safest move for black to play. And one of the suggestions here is to actually play a4 because white has 2 pawns on the queen side. So this is like a pawn majority for white on the queen side. If you haven't heard of that term before, it's really simple. It's just count how many pawns you have. This side is the queen side, obviously, and the other side's the king side. So if your opponent has a queen side majority, that usually means their pawns are stronger there. But one of the things you can do is then just try to break through or destroy their pawn structure all the time. So when you play something like a4 and lets your opponent play, for example, b takes a4 potentially, they do get double pawns now, but it's also potentially easier for you to like attack this pawn, keep your knight on c5 because there's no longer any b4 ideas, and then just go for the a3 pawn afterwards. So once you, for example, take on a4, rook takes, queen takes, there's going to be rook a8 ideas, and then you go for the a3 pawn, and black's knight is really good on c5, and because white does not have a dark squared bishop or another knight, this knight has a nice outpost. So that's an outpost on c5. So another reason why to play a4 is that if b4 happens and kicks the knight away, then the knight can go to b3 and then go to d4, which is an even better outpost and also a dark square and also cannot be attacked. So you can kind of see how like all these square ideas are really important for positional gameplay, which are things that you might not have thought about previously. Alright, so after f5, b4, a takes, black's, or Hikaru's knight rather, can't play b3, knight d4, which means that it has to retreat, and this is evidently a little bit more passive because now white can get his rook over to c7, for example, or c6 in order to attack the d6 pawn. So you really want to be playing a little bit more actively in these kind of positions because, yeah, you like, as you can see, the eval bar is creeping up. Alright, g takes f4. Black now has to decide how to lose a pawn. And after e takes f4, there's queen e6 check, followed by queen takes d6, which wins the pawn like that. And one of the ideas that black could have had in this position is rook takes f4, which doesn't allow the queen to go to e6. And I am 100% sure that Ronaldo saw every single one of these moves when he was playing this game, you know. But that's okay. He might not have made the best move, but it's pretty hard to play great chess all the time. So after rook takes f4, rook takes d6, you would still lose the d pawn, but you would get the b4 pawn back. The only unfortunate part is that white would get so much of this center and push the pawn and being able to like activate the bishop. And there's bishop d5 ideas, and this knight is super weak. So you also have rook e7 ideas, and you know, all of this stuff gets really crazy. So Hikaru in this position had to make a choice, and he decided to play e takes f4, which lets queen to e6. Obviously, you can't play rook d6 because the queen is hanging. So after e takes f4, queen e6, rook to f7, there's queen takes d6, and after queen to g5, black actually has some threats with pushing the f pawn. So white can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna start pushing my b pawn and going for promotion. He actually has to deal with some of his own problems over here on the king side now that white's king is a little bit more exposed with the g pawn gone. So here, White played king to h1. Magnus played king to h1 in order to get out of this pin. And Hikaru plays f3 anyways. Another move that Magnus could have considered is rook c8 check, followed by rook takes c8, and when the king goes to g7, for example, then playing king to h1, and then playing f3, and then bishop f1 is likely going to be a better version of the game that happened, because what do you want to do when your opponent's attacking you? I know chat doesn't show up on the stream right now, but you guys can say it anyways in the comments or whatever. Usually you just want to, you know, exchange off your opponent's pieces and get into an endgame when you're up a pawn and about to promote. So that's why playing rook c8 would have been a better version of the game, because your opponent now has one less rook to attack you with. I understand that a counter argument might be that, oh, but I have one more piece that I can defend with. Usually, it's just more effective to swap off your opponent's piece. Like in this case, if you could just swap off your opponent's queen, that would be really effective, right? Because then you won't be getting checkmated. So king h1, f3, bishop to f1, knight to f6. Hikaru is obviously pushing up his pieces, and the game is, you know, getting a little bit crazy. White is still up the pawn, but his king is a little bit weak, and also his opponent has another piece he can still bring into the attack, which is the rook on a8 and also the rook on f7. Neither of those pieces are currently doing too much, but for example, this knight is eyeing the e4 square, trying to take on f2. So Magnus is still sort of just defending his position, plays queen to e6, and then after that, Black plays king to g7, so he can actually utilize this rook because it was pinned beforehand. Rook c7, rook takes, king to h6. The king hides a little bit on h6. There are no checkmates from White. He doesn't have a dark squared bishop. And also a rook and a queen is not quite enough to checkmate when there's a knight protecting like half of the squares. So after rook to e1, Black uses his other rook to move on to the second rank, which is also a really important idea. Rooks on the second or rooks on the seventh are always super strong. And then after rook to e7, there is knight to g4. And this is actually around the part
Nemo.
where
How
the board is, sorry about that, where you can see the board very, very clearly. I'm going to zoom in for all of you so you can see what's going on here. But this is basically exactly the position that we have on the board, which is sort of cool. So after this is the position, and the result of this game is a draw because, well, white is just here. Sorry, I realize I didn't quite minimize it, but this is exactly the position that we have on the board over here, on the suitcase. And the end of this result is the result of this game is a draw because White is up a bishop and Black doesn't have anything better than perpetual. So this is literally the end of the game, and this is the position they have on the suitcase, which is so cool. Sorry, the trunk, the Louis Vuitton trunk, which is so cool. It's so cool that they use this game. And yeah, I looked at this game the instant I saw the post and was like, I have to share it with everyone because there's nothing I find cooler than when chess and fashion merge. Why this game? I do not know, but this game was actually played between Magnus Carlsen on the white side and Hikaru on the black side. I personally enjoyed this game so much. I've always been a huge fashion fan. I've always liked chess, and I think seeing something like this from Louis Vuitton photographed by the amazing Annie Leibovitz is just amazing. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you're clicking that thumbs up button as well as subscribing, and thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you would like to see me take a look at for the next video.